Paul,
I'll be, yeah,
start with the
that's
overview, understand what my contribution is. We're recording as we go, demonstrate as we go, get some picture of what's happening, have some fun, and enjoy the interview.
I hope so. The book is. We should start with the audience.
Yes.
Imagine the 30-something mid-manager who is bright and sparky and has all of the potential to be a corporate leader, a company leader, an entrepreneur in future. We're not necessarily thinking that far in future, that within the next 10 years they'll be doing Alex's job, for example. We actually have I suppose, a prototype in mind for this. I'm not sure that you met her at Best of Leap in London last year. There's a woman called Jen Gilligan who works at the Telegraph, who was one of the on-stage speakers slightly earlier in the day. She fits this model perfectly. She's bright. She's absolutely hugely frustrated that all of the stuff she wants to do now she doesn't feel empowered to because she's slightly too far down the chain. So the purpose of the book is to address her and people like her and offer some thoughts on what management and leadership issues you're going to encounter now and how that might change in future. The area that we particularly wanted to talk to you about, Eddie, was communication, the style and the substance of it. And as the demographics of the workplace change and the technological context of the workplace change, indeed, is there even going to be a workplace in future? You, the human being, the aspirational 30-something manager, as you progress through your career, what do you need to bear in mind? Things that might affect how you approach work today, but will absolutely, without question, affect your work in future. So the questions that I have for you, as I said, they're all about, they're framed as if they're talking about the future, but they're really talking about communication.
Got it.
How to persuade people to performance.
Okay.
So if I can, are you happy for me to wade straight in, or any questions on what the book is about?
No, I'm happy. I'm very happy. Yes. So we could go straight to your questions, or I could give you some background.
Let's start with some background.
Okay. So let's start with some background. I'll draw it, and let's hope that all the connections are fast enough for us to do. I'm taking us to a place called View Presentation. If you can come yourself, that's great. If you can't, it's just too bad. I'll just drag you in exactly 3, 2, 1. You're there. Okay. So background to the mess we're in at the moment. Very simple. The way I see it is that over the past 30 years, if I make this a timeline, okay, so that's 30-year timeline. If you look at things like the pace of change, the level of complexity, the number of people on the planet, the interdependence between people, the amount of complexity and chaos, it does this lovely hockey stick, which everyone is now familiar with. Okay, so the world is happily getting more complex, more connected, faster speed technology. Not interesting. If you look at how fast you can learn and change in an organization, you discover something else. You can only work on stuff which was in the budget, in the strategy. Your boss has to sign off what you do. The organizations are only interested in what they do. Therefore, if you look at the pace at which you learn and change, what you discover is most organizations start off in a world where they could learn fast and the world around them was changing. In other words, they could do annual budgets and stuff like that, and it made sense. But the ability for them to learn and change has been pretty flat over that period. Okay?
Yeah.
Paul? Yeah. Now, why this is important is because as long as you can learn fast and the world is changing, then when you're communicating, you can communicate facts, you can tell people clearly, they know what's coming, there isn't a huge emotional content to it and quotient to it and so forth. On top of that, if you're in that type of situation and you're building an organization where you can learn fast and the world is changing, if you're intelligent, what you do is you put the smartest person who understands the situation best at the top. And what they then do is they then tell people who are working for them exactly what to do. And guess what? They can tell them exactly what to do because they've learned it all. They know better. You with me? And then, of course, the organization grows, you put some more layers, and they tell this lot what to do. And if you do a fantastic job of all of it, then what you end up with is you end up with what we call a standard organizational hierarchy, which is a lovely
Yeah.
machine. It's a pyramid like this, okay? And in the old world, which is what I call this side over here, in the old world, the machine worked. It basically was designed about 400 years ago when Britain had a navy. Um, it works very, very straightforward, simple. If you think about being at sea, when you're at sea, it's very noisy. The waves are all over the place. If you're in a boat, especially a boat of some sort with sails, you have a problem. And the problem is this: the captain at the end of the ship can't tell the person who's tying the ropes what to do. So he issues an order. Lash the yard up to the crew kringle. Next person passes on. Lash the yard up. It goes all the way down the reporting line, the chain, to the person who does the work, who then has to, and the technology is called report back, because there were no mobile phones, no technology. So they then pass the message back. Yeah, lash the yard up. Hoist the mainsail. Have you seen that in films? And we still have that in the organization. We have this thing where the message goes down the tree, and then the work gets done, and then you write a report, and then it goes back up the tree. And we even use the word reporting line and so on. So for most people, management is based on power. Most of the power is at the top, less power at the bottom. Leadership, in other words, where we're going to go next, is based on the person who knows the most, who is probably at the top also. So the leadership is all at the top, and down at the bottom, you basically have to follow. The managers have more power, and the leaders set the agenda. And that's what we used to do in the old world. But for the past 15 to 20 years, that scenario has not existed. It doesn't mean people aren't still doing it. That's why your 30-something is frustrated. Because what they've done is they've kept the mechanism and all the processes, and then they've said to them things like, we now want you to have initiative and have a vision and so on. So here's your 30-year-old somewhere down here. They go off, they have an idea, they do something. Bad news, when they do it on their own bat, it affects this other person over here who we'll call Fred. Fred then does what? Goes up the reporting line complaining all the way to the boss. The boss then sends down 2 lightning bolts by knocking their directors' heads together. One zaps Fred, one zaps the person who took the initiative. Fred learns not to complain because it just comes back and gets you. And your, what's her name, Audrey, whoever it is, basically then gets pissed off because every time she takes initiative, somebody stamps on her. And she waits also for an opportunity to get revenge on that bastard Bob who got into trouble. So the whole mechanism is broken. And the words which people use are beautiful and all very laudable. You know, take initiative, be innovative. You know, we want your creativity. You must have purpose. All that stuff in all those books, great. But the fundamental structure hasn't changed. So all you do is raise people's expectations and then piss them off. Are you allowed to write words that piss them off in a book? You translate that into proper words. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first problem. The second problem. Hierarchies were built when people were doing the same thing over and over again because it works really well. Then they started doing projects. When you do projects, you're doing something different every day. So what they did was they built like mini project hierarchies to tie people together to do different things on a different daily basis. Of course, that was really hard. They decided they had to move the information flows around so people could do their plans and projects and their campaigns and stuff, which is where Workfront makes its money. By moving the data, the forms around, and keeping the people in the hierarchical positions, if that makes sense. All looks great, but you're still using the model from the old world. And then the last killer, and this is the one which is really funny. You will have noticed that most CEOs these days are smart enough not to spend too much time in their own organizations. Instead, they spend their time buying and selling other companies. And you know why? Because if you're running an organization which is a hierarchy and you've got a top team, when they sit around the boardroom or when they're reading board papers or whatever else, there is a maximum speed at which you can get information into that group and round that group to make a decision. It's about 10 megabits per second.
Yeah.
Do you understand what this means? So in the old world, where we used to sit on horses, that meant it was fine. You could get the idea to the boss. They could make a decision. They could pass their decision down. Bad news. The information outside is doing 1,000. The information inside is doing 2,000. You can never supply enough information to your top team for them to be informed and make a sensible decision and pass that down. Do you understand that? So
what's the solution?
Well, the hierarchy is broken. It doesn't work as a mechanical system. It's got to be a network system. Only network. The reason that we can move the information at 1,000 megabits a second is because we're using the internet, which is a network system.
Yeah.
So that the structure of how you organize people with who does who for what is linear, it's centralized, and it can't cope with that volume of flow.
It's also, by definition, it's not transparent.
Yes, it shouldn't be transparent because don't forget that we all hated Fred because he ratted on us. So Fred's going to keep his stuff secret, and I'm going to keep my stuff secret. So not only is it not transparent, I'm actively hiding it from you in case you use it against me. Okay.
So
that's
basically, it's an innovation killer.
Yes. Well, everything was going to break because the machinery you're using for coordinating it doesn't work. And don't forget, in the old world, we didn't want that much innovation. It was like one new product every 20 years. It's only because we've got to this world we want innovation. And then we stick it into this machinery and it doesn't work. So that was why I wanted to give you the background. Because in my view, there are millions and millions of words written which I think make the world a sadder place. Because the words are so laudable. You must be innovative. Use design thinking. And. But the people who listen to them absorb them and believe them, but they can never get there because you've chained them down.
It's interesting.
Now let's look at your questions.
Our model, Jen from the Telegraph, between the start of this book project and today, she's currently working notice. That we discovered that our prototype is leaving for precisely the reasons that you've just described. That she wants to innovate, she's tried to innovate, and she finds progress blocked at every turn. So she's going to, frankly, bugger off and do something else by herself.
Yeah, she has to do it by herself, or in a small group, or in a modern type organization, because the old hierarchies are not going to allow. They'll say the right words, but they'll never ever let you free. The only way you can do it is what I used to do, which is guerrilla tactics. And unless you're prepared to be a guerrilla, you can't do it. So what I used to do when I worked in a hierarchy at Ashridge was I'd go, right, I want to change that. I think about the organization not as a structure, but just as stakeholders. So I'd say, okay, if I do this, who am I going to piss off? Okay, if I do this, who do I need to support me? And I'd go, well, I need Fred, I need Bill, and I'd go and have coffee with them. And I'd make like a secret organization. And I would work with them, and anything good which came, I would give them credit. And I would give credit especially to the people who are likely to be my enemies when something good happened, because then they couldn't rubbish me. So that was how I survived in a hierarchy driving innovation. But most people are so straight and so good, they don't know how to build organizations based on people. They still keep using the organizational structures, and the structure is there to prevent you doing anything. Remember, it was put in place to control you. That was the whole point of the hierarchy. The more senior person told the other ones what to do.
Well, that's a really good point. Obviously, when the structure exists not to innovate, it's to perpetuate a system. It becomes kind of like a
which is an intelligent thing to do, because in the old world, tomorrow looks like yesterday. So you want people to do what worked yesterday. It's the most intelligent thing you could possibly ever do. The bad news is we don't live in the old world, we live in a new world where tomorrow doesn't look like today. So all those mechanisms and the captain on the bridge, all broken.
So because this kind of neatly leads us into the second question, really, that if the hierarchy is broken, if the actual structure of organisations is broken and needs to adapt, how do leaders need to communicate? I mean, essentially, if there's a network model where you have multiple stakeholders who are listened to and have their seat at the virtual table because they've got something intelligent to say, how do you get the best out of people? How do you communicate with them, and how does that look different to today?
Okay, so just quick definition, really important. Okay. When I was doing my drawing, I used managers and leaders as different things. So you become a manager by, you work hard, the organization grows below you. One day, another manager comes to you, puts their hands on says, "Arise, thou art manager, take your car keys in your corner office." And you become a manager, and you have more power, and you can compel people to do things. So managers have power, which allows them to compel people to do things. They have resources, they have sign-offs. How do you become a leader?
Yeah.
A leader is a completely different concept. 20 people, I don't know, walk down the street dressed funny and dancing. Okay, if they're on their own, then you just laugh at them. But if the first one ahead of them all is also dancing funny and dressed funny, that one's the leader. So leaders become leaders because other people follow them. If that makes sense. So leader is not a job. It's not a job description. It's not a job role. What I've seen in 20 years is we've taken the word leader, which never used to be used in the context of organizations, used to be used in the context of things like wartime special exploits and so on, or pioneering going to the North Pole. We dragged it into the organizational word, and then we made it synonymous with the words senior manager.
Yeah.
So this creates so much confusion because people say, what do I do about leadership? And what they mean is, what do I do about my senior managers? Okay. So I'm assuming you're asking me a question about leaders, not managers. So leaders.
I'm absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely right. Can I just, I'll give you an example of what one of the other contributors has said around this topic of how do leaders communicate. And this was a chat with Jay Bayer, the content marketing expert, funny word, over in the US. And we were talking about, he was saying, well, leaders in future need to communicate in short, digestible chunks. And I said, well, this is a paradigm shift, isn't it? Because everybody's culturally absorbs the idea, and it kind of goes back to your kind of military observation. The cultural understanding of a leader is somebody who makes the kind of Henry V speech, or the state address, or the big set piece speech that everybody cheers and they go over the top and follow them, as you say. But I don't understand how that will work if the future is leaders communicating in small chunks. There's a kind of disconnect between what we culturally understand to be a leader and how we think leaders might communicate, which potentially means that it's all just, as you say, it's all just wrong, that the structure's wrong, our understanding of the roles.
Yeah. When he says, I'm not going to be rude about him, but when he says communicate in short chunks, what he means is give instructions in small chunks. Because the way a leader communicates to the followers is through 4 different routes. They communicate through their behavior. And if you physically can see them, they can actually give you, because the whole point of a good leader is that you're following them. So things get done the way they would like, even though no instructions are given. So their behavior gives you a clue on how to follow them. They communicate through emotions, through laughter, through excitement, your Henry V piece, and so on, because that connects with you in your heart and compels you to act. They communicate through the actions. So that would be if there were instructions or things they do or things they can actually show you. And then they communicate through their thinking. They explain why they're doing things. They set the context. They frame things for you. So that's how leaders communicate. And that hasn't really changed that much because leadership communication is with a human. It's not to do with the organization, if that makes sense. Okay? Well, management communication is different. Managers used to give almost no instructions because the processes took care of them. Then if there was a change, the manager would break it all down, give everyone a specific role, and describe to them in detail what they needed to do. I mean, if you go back and look up early books on delegation explaining how to do that. The thing in the modern world, with this bottleneck of managers, they can't explain what they're supposed to do. And also, there's too much to explain. On QUBE, when we're teaching, we always say, you don't talk for more than 7 minutes before letting people do something. Is that fair, Leo? Am I quoting you correctly? Okay. And the reason for that is because even though when you're leading a session, your input's great, but there are other people who are going to contribute as well because you don't understand all their problems. So when he's talking about smaller bite-sized chunks, he's talking about management, not leadership, and he's talking about dealing with the fact the world's changing so fast. So yes and no.
Well, this is interesting because one of the themes that throughout the book, I mean, one of the things I should say is that Alex isn't looking for everybody to agree with him or the other contributors. So different voices, different perspectives, we're embracing that, and it will make it a richer book as a result. One of the themes that keeps on coming back is how much is human nature a constant? That again, in the context of all of the technological change, the change in the demographic composition of a workplace, the breaking down of geographical barriers, all of these kinds of things, mush it all together. Yeah. How much is human nature a constant? And just be able to talk to people and relate and have empathy. That's these are the things that will distinguish between a leader and a manager in future.
Yeah, so management is probably it's going to struggle, because management is starting to look, if it's not change or project or program type management, if it's day-to-day management, that will disappear because the computers will take care of that. If it's doing new things, getting people excited, that links to human beings. Human beings don't evolve that fast. Our cycle is 14 years to get to the next generation. So although the technology can change in 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, the human beings don't change, and they change slowly. Plus, they don't change that much because the pressures on evolution are really low. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're smart, bright, strong, disabled, whatever it is, no one's going to kill you off and let your genes take over. So human beings have probably also stopped evolving. So we're stuck with whatever human nature was, and that's not moving anywhere. So yes, I think the secret is, if you're looking to now or the future, now because your model person has quit, it's about leadership, proper leadership, not leadership as other people say. And it's about engaging with human beings through their behavior, emotions, actions, thinking, the things which make human beings human. On the communication front, there's also stuff which it's probably just worth picking up on. The managers can't give the detailed instructions. The leaders can inspire people with the problem and the framing. So leaders get very good at choosing the right level of communication. So if, for example, you meet your boss and you want to communicate with your boss, you don't talk about the detail. You talk about the purpose. Why are we doing this? This is what we're trying to do. I'm working really hard towards it because it'll make this difference in the world, etc., etc. You go up to what I call level 1. If you meet a colleague and you want to inspire them, you frame the problems which you're having or they might have at their level. So you'll say, how might we think about this differently, etc., etc. And if you have somebody who's more junior to you, probably working in more detail, then you frame the communication in terms of the things which are important to them, the details. Because you can't understand everything, by framing the conversation, it allows you to communicate with people. The other thing you have to do, if you're going to be an effective leader in this fast-changing new world, is we call it implications questions. No one ever understands what you're saying, because guess what? The world's changing too fast. So of all the things I've said, I have no idea whether you've got or understood them, unless I ask you, so how is this going to change what you write in your article? Or how is this going to counterpoint with what Alex says? And then I shut up and listen to you. In other words, if I ask you about the implications of what I've said, I find out whether you actually got the message. And my assumption is most of the messages which I'm trying to get across, you won't get, because that's the nature of the fast-changing new world. So I have to keep testing. So communication becomes a bit weird. In the old world, it was this two-way thing, because you and I were on the same wavelength. We knew the same things. We'd read the same books-ish, if you see what I mean. New world, chances are what I'm talking about you have no clue about. So when I explain it, I have to ping you. I have to test it. And you'll see people doing more and more of this type of behavior. It's also good for the recipient of the communication, because they get a chance to show off if they've understood, and they get a chance to find out that they haven't, so they don't rush off and waste their time doing something which is useless.
But this is also, these rules also apply to teachers. I mean, this is a thing that strikes me, that this isn't just leadership. This is about teaching. You could apply this to somebody giving a French lesson in a classroom of teenagers as well. That how do you test? You ping the kids to see if they've understood what's just been said.
Correct. That's these days. New world. Old world, you just beat them with a stick. Okay. The other things which I think in terms of communication are really important are right now I'm moving stuff, we're talking. You're new to QUBE, so you're probably not, you don't feel that you could put a sticky up on here or something like that, but you could. Um, but this whole process of thinking together is very much where we're heading or where we want to go. The old world, we communicated and collaborated by passing things like pass the parcel. So I would do something, pass it to you, you'd make your comments, pass it on to the next person. But a fast-changing world with complexity, that's just dumb. You know certain things. You have the expression I think is a talent stack. I think that's the Adams phrase for it. You have a talent stack which is different from my talent stack. So the best thing is if we think together, we bring elements of our talent stacks together. You bring your view on writing and your understanding about teachers. I bring my bit about organization. Leo brings in his bit about how to make sure that people can facilitate. Between us, we come up with something marvelous. So communication stops being this binary thing and becomes this sort of whirlwind of shared ideas.
Can I take you to something that you said on the stage at Best of Leap? And this has this has been brewing in my mind for many months. I wrote a piece for Workfront about it, which hasn't been published yet, but it's kind of on the theme. You started off at Best of Leap, and you were talking about at home. Kids are playing with their friend down the street. Everything's connected, everything's super fast, and we don't even think about doing it. And then you go to work into this kind of 20th century environment. I was thinking about some of the implications of that, and I was thinking in particular about gaming culture. And it struck me that video games, most of them have a kind of, they all have a set of rules. So there's an objective, there's a narrative, there are your progress is charted and rewarded or punished depending on how well you've done. So you level up, you get experience points, you're rewarded with more equipment, And I was kind of wondering whether or not there's a parallel here for the rules of how video games work. The way that we're all willing to embrace the rules of video games in an automated environment. Will a bot be able to recommend you for a promotion?
Okay, you're getting onto the ethics of why the machines are going to win.
Well,
I was trying hard to avoid this. Okay,
yeah, I'm not really arguing. I don't really want to go down the line of will the machines win. It's really if my performance is going to be augmented in some way, it already is.
Yeah, it is. It is already.
So if all of the quantifiable data about my performance is available to a bot,
correct,
and the bot understands I've reached a certain point of progress against a project or objectives, why couldn't it level me up? Why couldn't it say, actually, Paul deserves a new car, or he deserves a bonus, a job title?
A bit of background, then we'll jump to the answer of that. So, old world, when you use the word performance, you had in mind really the sort of like piece rate. So it was things which you were delivering. We could count the number of pins you'd made. Okay? Yeah. And that mindset still links when people talk about performance. And old world, when you're talking about performance, you were always thinking about the individual. You were measuring the individual person to see how good they were. Those ideas still persist. So the reality, of course, is if you start to have the complex new world with collaboration, with overlapping talent stacks, your success is as dependent on my success as mine is on Leo's. But we still have performance targets and goals, and we still have metrics. What the bot will measure, how many widgets we produced or how much innovation we created or whatever, the metrics which are measurable. What the bot will struggle to measure is the interdependence and serendipity through which we innovated to create it together, the corridor conversations. So yes, the bot will be able to measure your performance, but I would argue it's measuring the wrong thing. I would argue most companies, they currently measure the wrong things. because they tend to measure the outcomes or the outputs, but not the process and the other inputs. They act as if each person is a unit on their own. Does that make sense? So yes, it will happen. The other thing which will also happen is that as the machines augment us, if you're smart in any way as a boss, you will make it gamified. So you'll make the work more gamified. In other words, you make the work so that people get a pleasure out of it and a little bit of dopamine, which is highly addictive, which keeps people doing stuff. Okay, a bit like you keep trolling Twitter, look and see how many hits you've had. Okay. Once you're in that game, the bots will simply just manage the people because the people will all be addicts. It'll be like Opium Wars all over again, but a different version.
Yeah. There's the direction.
You can't put any of that in the book.
No. This is highly relevant. Is essentially it's the same line of argument. It goes in. It kind of branches out in a slightly different way in the sense that a bot can't measure how charming a salesperson.
No.
But the charm is what determines ultimately whether or not a sale goes through. I mean, there are price and other factors, but persuasion. Would you rather have a dash of brilliant creativity or a glut of creative mediocrity? Really, it's how do you measure creativity? All of these kind of intangible, unmeasurable things.
They will get there.
That humans will still need to worry about.
Yeah, they will get closer to it because they'll do proxy measurements. It's like when they're designing cars and somebody says, I want the car to feel plush. They go, what does plush mean? Soft seats, slightly quiet, muffled sounds. So they go through, what does muffled sounds mean? Well, it means that on the sound meter, there should be more low frequencies than high frequencies. Now, what does that mean? It means we have to put fatter tires on there. So they will figure out how to get to even things like plush using proxy measurements. So that will happen. It's just a matter of time. The thing is, you're still assuming that the individual is the unit of work. But in the new world, there are 4 different units of work. There's the individual, there's the team, there's the network, and then there's their society around them. There's 4 different metrics. 4 different ways in which people generate stuff. So, and most measurement and performance is just based on the individual. It takes no notice of your network, who you're connected to, what society you're in, and that gets complicated. It will come eventually, but that's where the mindsets are at the moment.
Yeah.
Is this useful? I'm not giving you good enough sound bites. God.
No, this is fine. I have plenty of words to play with, and the best words win. So don't worry. While we're on the topic of bots and broadly speaking automation, can I skip on to question 4 and broadly speaking bot etiquette? Because one of the things that I think is interesting. I was talking.
That's 4.
Yeah,
if you go for the yellow triangle above, it'll zoom you in.
Cool.
Your head's in the way. You were talking, you said, Paul. Hey, Paul's starting to use QUBE properly. Go on. Talking, you said.
I was talking to some guys recently about Amy.ai or Andrew.ai, the virtual assistants that loads of folks are using at the moment. And I told them the story of setting up a meeting with a guy, and it's the first time I'd come across Amy, and the guy says, I'll let Amy sort out in a meeting, and I get an email, and it's, hi Paul, how are you? What's your availability like on such and such a day? And I'm thinking, for the first time,
it felt real.
Do I just supply keywords, or do I say hello? And then it made me start to think about, well, this is a woman, so somebody has decided that there is gender, and then there's nothing to stop people applying age or ethnicity or geography or all these other factors, and you kind of realise why Apple's gone for Siri as a kind of a gender neutral, ethnically neutral, age neutral, as neutral as you can get. It sounds a bit future, but it's not something that you would pin to one particular geography or culture. And that just made me start thinking about this whole question of, if my performance is augmented by bots and the bots are getting smarter, how do I talk to bots? So
Leo, do you want to
bot
explain quickly
etiquette.
to Leo? Do you want to explain quickly to Paul why our avatars are all exactly the same and they don't look like human beings?
Yep, exactly. Well, once you have a boss in the room, you know, you already can tell who the boss is. And as QBots, we're all same gender, you know, same size, same height, same, you know, pretty much everything. So what matters is not how we look like. We even tried that in the past, you know, trying to make the QBots fancier, you know, stylish. But we're here for learning. We're here to collaborate and, you know, do something better than if we were not doing it together. So those square box QBots, they help. You know, they do not distract us from what we're really after.
So
It's interesting, just going off the point slightly. A good friend of mine wears a hijab, and she
Okay.
was saying, this means that you have to judge me what I say and how I think rather than how I look. It's not quite as straightforward as that, as she finds out every day when she walks down the street, but the principle's there.
Yeah. So the principle is very much the same. I mean, the advantage, the reason we went for these QBots also is they all have smileys. Well, you can put your own picture, but we tend to use smileys because as opposed to using
Yeah.
dopamine to drug people, we want to use oxytocin. And we know oxytocin levels go up when people see a smiley. So you tend to like the QBots in here more than you like the people you meet outside here in case they look like your old geography teacher you hated. You know, so these are really important questions. The other thing to remember also is that human beings are now relatively easy to persuade and manipulate. I mean, all the work from people like Robert Cialdini and so on means that we understand how to start to write, say, your welcome message from Amy.ai, so you'll say yes. So Cialdini's principles will be built into the email. In fact, she'll write a better email than your friend. She would have figured out from any information she's gleaned about you off the internet which words you tend to use. She'll mirror you. So if your favorite word in all your articles is, I don't know, undisputed, she'll say the meeting on the 4th is the undisputed best one. You know, so not only will she be able to use all the persuasion techniques, she'll be able to troll into you and customize it for you. We're back into the ethics of will the robots win? Of course, the robots will win. They probably already have. How would we know? You know, it's the old stupid person versus smart person. Stupid person always thinks smart person is extra stupid because they don't understand what they're doing. So they probably already won.
Well, again, going off the point, there was a lovely moment on Christmas Eve where all my children are gathered around the table. We're just chatting away. They're all under 10, and I asked Siri, "Does Father Christmas exist?" And Siri replied, "He's not the only one. I'm not the only one who knows if you've been naughty or nice," which I thought had great wit, but also was quite sinister at the same time. And I'm kind of wondering what things that you know that these we appreciate and we respond to wit, and
Yes.
these kind of little touches of intelligence make a huge amount of difference to how we perceive technology and how we interact.
So there's a physical version moving from the AI to the US robotics, the big dog. And there's a lovely show when I'm teaching, which is they're testing the big dog and somebody's trying to kick it to make it fall over. Do you have any idea what the most normal response is when I show this robot being kicked by one of the researchers is?
It's horror, I would imagine, that it's just
Exactly.
the awfulness of the idea of somebody
Correct.
picking.
Exactly. The empathy goes straight to the robot, and against the human. So there's two questions in the one you've asked about, you know, where humans and bots interact. The rules for us will be we will follow whatever rules are written into the AI because we will have no choice. It'll be like the ultimate salesperson. It'll persuade us. The second rule is that eventually, when we are interacting with these bots, we will have to decide for ourselves whether they're more powerful than us or we're more powerful than them. And it'll be very difficult because they'll be so persuasive. And so there is no oversight. There is no, nuclear. If you're going to do nuclear stuff, there's like the convention in Geneva, which says, let's have a look at your nuclear stuff. If you're going to work on viruses like smallpox, there's somebody looking over your shoulder. Generally, if you're doing pharma, even if it's to help mankind, they don't let you practice on normal human beings. You have to try it out on theory, then on rats, then on cats, then finally they let you loose on a human being. AI and all the modern tech is directly tested out on human beings. We put tablets in front of babies. What does it mean? It means that whatever the bot etiquette is, it'll be defined by the AI. It won't be defined by us. So I just struggle with answering your question. That's all.
No, I think that's a very eloquent answer to the question. We won't define it.
No.
No. We've got 10 minutes left. This has been good because one of the things as an interviewer, it's really tedious, to be honest, supplying a list of questions and then just going through. It's much more interesting to have a more free-flowing conversation. But I do want to skip back to the very first question because I number one. So I'm interested in tedious stuff because all the books and leadership books that you read, they tend to talk about, again, the Henry V model. We're doing great things. We're going to change the world. We're going to change. The reality for most people's jobs isn't that. It really isn't that. There is tedious but necessary work you'll have to do.
So the most important
how can a leader?
There's two things in this question which are important. First of all, the most important word in that whole thing is necessary. And then the second one is the bit which says we're told work needs to matter and that it needs to have meaning.
Yeah.
So if I take the two of them, it'll explain what's going on. So you might love writing, but you probably also like being quiet. You also probably like occasionally meeting interesting, funny people. In other words, matter and meaning to you aren't a single thing. And I have a different set of things which matter and mean something to me. Being social, laughing, who knows? You with me? So the problem with the books you're quoting is they act as if we all have the same definition of matter and meaning. And each individual has multiple definitions and drives, and they change through your life. When you're much younger, meaning might be everybody's said I'm the best student in class. When you're 50, you couldn't give a damn what people say. It's more about giving back or whatever. So that's the first thing, that matter and meaning are dependent on the person. So as a leader, it's important to understand what matters to the other person, and you can always do that by asking them, or by saying, if the Paul who really understood you was to say to me what really mattered to you at this moment, what would Paul say to me?
Oh, it's I'm having a baby in May.
That's correct. Okay. Well, there you go. You see what I mean? So as a leader, now I understand that I can start to respond to your matter and meaning. The other word is necessary. Necessary is really important because if it's necessary, it's helping somebody, saving someone's life, keeping the organization going, allowing you to produce software which keeps project managers happy. Necessary. If something is necessary, why is it not glamorous? I mean, what could be more important than to be necessary and to be needed? And again, the books sort of try to focus on something new and novel. And it's a big mistake. Craftspeople, people who hone their skills, programmers, anyone who builds their skills, teachers, writers, they get the joy of it by taking something which means something to them, or taking something which is necessary and making it better and better. It's not to change the world. In fact, my favorite line at the moment, I say, please stop changing my world. I'm quite happy with it as is. Okay. And anyway, when they go and change the world, they never check with the people whose worlds they're changing, whether or not they want it changed. But it's really important. Necessary tasks, the trick is to connect the necessary task back to the recipient of the necessary task, the outcome of the necessary task, and to help people to see that connection. And the second element is to understand what matter and meaning is for the person you're connecting to. And if you do that, now, future, same thing. Doesn't make any difference. It's one of those human things.
That's brilliant. I think
I can't remember what question.
I've got more than enough. No, well, it kind of all blends into one a little bit around communication and style and substance. And the question about is a workplace in the conventional sense going to exist? I'm less worried about that one because in some respects it's if we're talking about a networked environment, and as we said at the very beginning, this call involves folks in the UK, folks in Brazil, we're all over the place. I'm more relaxed about that question.
Great. So what we've learned from living on QUBE, and Josh is here, so maybe he can add some stuff as well. What we've learned is that things like not seeing somebody, but seeing them in the VR environment, or even hearing them in the VR environment, can give strong relationships as well. Quite surprising, because face-to-face isn't all it's cracked up to be. Learned that. I don't know, Josh, Leo, do you want to add some stuff about, because we live and work here in this 3D world. So I can actually, two people can actually give you a case story. I don't know, Leo, Josh, do you want to just talk a little bit about living and working on?
Well, I've been working for, I don't know, 6 years or more in a virtual environment, and from everybody I work with, I've been working with several people in those years. The only person I actually met face to face was Eddie, and that was, a couple of times only.
Yeah.
And that's once every, I don't know, 2 years or even more. But I have a strong relationship with some of my colleagues, because although we haven't met each other face to face, we've been involved in several different activities and projects. So we even share some of the things we do in our local environment, like our family stuff, our dogs or cats, or so you kind of have an idea if your colleague's not feeling well because something bad happened to them, or the other way around. And also you begin to understand and be friends with those people. So yes, you do develop a strong relationship, and I'm very happy with that. It's new for all of us, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I would also add that it changes the way that you work with your colleagues, because when you have the ease of QUBE and getting people together who could be in a different city or a different country on a different continent, you stop thinking about having to plan big meetings or important calls, and you just get people together when you need them to. It's very easy to just draw people into the space, and it's sort of replicating the environment of, say, just walking over to a colleague's desk and asking them a question, but across the world, and having that ability to just pull people in when you need them for a quick chat and then let them go off again, and you've not disrupted their day because they haven't had to leave their desk.
Yeah, I get that. And it's interesting as well that you look at kind of Slack or Skype or a variety of other virtual conferencing and working tools, obviously in a very different format to this. They're all trying to build in beyond text communication. I mean, some are going down the routes of, obviously emojis, GIFs, all of this kind of stuff. If you can't plug in Giphy to something, then you can't communicate properly. This is very different. This is very, very different.
Yeah, we started trying to teach, and once you go into, I want to teach people, as in emotionally teach them, you discover that you end up here because nothing else works.
Yeah.
You just can't. Great. Should we look at hopes and fears quickly? Just make sure. So, Paul, if you hit hopes and fears, we can make sure we covered everything, and then we'll get into a circle and spin and see make sure everyone's happy. So Leo, over to you on the hopes and fears.
Okay, we still have a minute, so we didn't run out of time. How was that for you, Paul, the hearing what other people have suggested? You don't think you will?
Nobody has said what Eddie has said, which is
good.
precisely what I was hoping. So thank you.
Okay, so we heard your overview when you shared about what the book's all about. You know, the different thoughts. That was the target audience. Well, Eddie, I think you also made it clear.
Yeah.
You know, that was clear for you. I've recorded the session. I need to edit afterwards, but that won't take too long, so I can share with you. If in case you missed some of the words, Paul, I don't know how. You probably do it better than someone recording, or at least more effective. But you know, you have that in case.
that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, and how was that? Did we, did we achieve that? You know, I certainly have had fun and enjoyed it.
I've had fun. I've enjoyed it. I've learned things, and I don't want to go back and do something boring with the rest of my day.
Great. Should we, Paul? Can you gather us in the circle? The way you do that is command click or right click on gather in circle and choose meet here. Then we'll come and join us. You're in a place called gather in circle above hopes and fears. Above hopes and fears, gather in circle, but you have to bring us. You've gone there yourself. Yeah. So right click or command click and say meet here. It'll drag all of us. No? Isn't it egalitarian? You see, the culture everyone talks about wanting of egalitarianism and stuff like that. We can do it digitally. Great. Should we spin from the top? Brilliant. I'll go first. Thank you very much, Paul. I hope it was useful. I hope the book comes out great. And yeah, that's me done. Josh?
I just want to say, yeah. Oh, sorry. You go, Paul.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, Eddie, one thing I should say is that you will get to see anything we write about that involves you and sign off before it's printed.
Oh, okay, that's normal. Great, thanks. Josh disappeared.
Okay,
and he's got another session. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I always, learn something new and enjoy it. So good luck and looking forward to read your book.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll talk again.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye. Bye. I've got to jump. Yes, bye. Bye.
You know how to leave, Paul? Okay, bottom right, you see a green man sitting on the red seat. Bottom right of your screen. You click there, then it's going to say, sure, you want to go back to the lobby. You click yes, that means you're off.
Cool, excellent. Leonardo, thank you for your time and your help, much appreciated.
You take care, Paul. Good to meet you. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.